Welcome to Paranormal Unwrapped with Krista Raisa and Jack Roth and Vivian Chauvet. Krista is a channel for Orion Council, ascension teacher, and artist. Jack is an investigative journalist, author, and award-winning filmmaker. Check out J3 Films Extraordinary, The Seeding, available on Amazon Prime and YouTube. Vivian Chauvet is an Arcturian hybrid, ambassador, spiritual teacher, speaker, and conscious channel. You can find her work on www.infinitehealingfromthestars.com. This time around, we are discussing collective trauma, topics such as cognitive dissonance and denial, and of course, the core issues that we've been collectively going through to have similar shared experience on this planet. Afterwards, we'll discuss solutions to these devastating events on our planet. Welcome to the episode. How are you guys doing today?
Great.
Yeah, we're doing really well. Thank you, Krista. We're excited. I'm always excited, but I feel like today's topic is probably one of the more, definitely one of the more intense ones we'll probably talk about, but an important one. And I think there was a reason why we kind of chose this, and we wanted Vivian here for this as well because of her background and the things that she does currently. And we're going to get to that. But, I think that today in the world we live in, more than ever, we're dealing with this. We seem to be dealing with anyway, with rampant corruption everywhere you look, right? Corruption, greed, and this conspiracy by what seems like these global elites to maintain power and control over us, over the masses. Now, this in itself is a sobering fact, right? And one that we have to deal with in our everyday lives. But what is the cost of this kind of behavior, especially when the acts of these, we'll call them perpetrators, lead to a collective trauma from which we all must heal? And what we mean by collective trauma is when something happens, and we'll take some events throughout history, the JFK, and specifically the JFK assassination, Watergate, 9/11, and these kinds of events that occur, that two things happen, right? First, there's this collective trauma that happens. I know we can all remember when at 9/11 where we were and how we felt that day, which was awful and scared and anxious and depressed, all these negative feelings associated with it. And for those who are old enough to have been alive during the JFK assassination, it was the same thing. Watergate was another kind of event that was not so much a one-day event, but an ongoing event. But what happens with events like those is that you have these things happen, and they happen, and they're terrible. They traumatize us, right, collectively as a society. But then something else happens. We realize that there's something not quite right about what we just experienced. And in the case of the JFK assassination, our president is killed. Then a couple days later, the quote unquote lone gun assassin is killed on is also murdered on live TV. So not only are you traumatized by that, but you're also left wondering, wait a minute, that doesn't make any sense. There's something not right here. And the same could be said. Well, obviously, Watergate was an obvious cover-up and involved corruption. 9/11, we can debate back and forth as to some of the things associated with 9/11 that just don't make sense. So I want to throw this to you guys. We talk about things like this that happen. First, let's talk about collective trauma. So we're all sitting there. We're either watching TV or we're going about our lives, and this thing happens. It affects the entire world, really. And it's known as collective trauma psychologically. This must be, from a spiritual standpoint, this has got to be some pretty heavy stuff. So, what are we talking about when we talk about that?
We're talking about what I understand to be psychologically is some sort of mass hypnosis, where if you can hypnotize a person to do things like see through objects or to not see an object, people are in a quite zombified state of consciousness. And the only solution, I'm ready to get to the solutions. Let's talk about the traumas, is to wake up. So
Right.
we're going to get there, folks. But yeah, I pose this. I suggest this one to be one of the main issues.
Vivian,
How about
what do you
Vivian?
think?
Yeah, we know us, with the collective, for the Octurans, we're always going to bring another layer, another flavor to it, and that's the beauty of all of us. Yes, indeed, to hypnotize a mass consciousness, and one of the best way to do it is to provoke and create an event around an icon, symbolism, something that everybody rally around, like JFK, by example. And we'll talk more about that, because 1963, what JFK was doing, he was creating a completely different, what's called a fork in the road in history, and then it would have other form of ripple effect. But to come back to what we're talking about right now is collective trauma is really affecting everyone at the cellular level, right in your luminous energy field. It affects generational and the ancestry generational that pass on to genes, to emotional imprint. It affects the planet, and the earth herself will also record, will also have registry, if you want, of these events and the mass impact it has had on the population. So it's written in the stones, it's written in the water, it's written even in, our physicality, in our being, and our even at the soul level. So there's a different level of implication to this. The other spectrum, if we may, the other spectrum is that it's also given opportunity, mass consciousness opportunity from group soul to, like you said, Krista, awaken. And allow me to give you one very brief example of this. Many years ago, I went to a Cryon event in Tucson, Arizona, and it was right after a very important shooting that took place when one of the governor or someone, the government or the state, I forgot what her title was deeply wounded to the point that her life was on stake. That person's life changed profoundly. There were people killed, there were people injured, there were children involved. There was just very traumatic, and it was, you would say, on a scale in Arizona, in Tucson. But at the same time, having a such spiritual, such amazing event gather there, that Cryon of great magnitude service came through and talk about it, and talk about also what that group soul were here to accomplish, what they as also prepare for this event and the ripple effect. I mean, we'll go deeper, like 9/11, for example. 9/11 has opened the heart center of millions of people around the world, and it has terrible, unspeakable effect that is still endured to this day to an entire nation, generational. Those who were kids grew up in that generation, those who were born after that, those who are still there as an adult. There's such a generational effect to cultural, through the country, USA, and the ripple effect on the planet. But at the same time is what happened at that moment. Everyone, everywhere, regardless. I was in another country at the time, but it didn't matter. It's almost like time stood still, like everything was put on hold, and all eyes, our heart, our energy, all thoughts were focused upon what was going on. And what was the thought coming
Right.
through from this is, how can I help? How can I pray? What role can I play to help and assist people? It didn't matter your cultural background. It didn't matter what you believed, and it didn't matter of your skin color. None of those earthly attachment that we're, as humans can hold on to and kind of pull themselves against each other. None of this mattered at that point. What happened is that our nation was in need, and it was great, great calling coming from. So why are we saying that? It's just a loving invitation to bring another aspect to the spectrum at a much, much bigger level, so to speak. At the soul level, there's also looking at what did it create in terms of change in the mass collective for people coming together in oneness, coming together in, you know what, I'm here for you, you're here for me. Let's take care of this. Let's bring solution. I'm talking about solutions. Let's work on this. But
Right.
again, of course, you know, the trauma behind it needs to be addressed and not to be ignored and not to be said, well, it's a spiritual event, so we're going to ignore the other aspect, right? And I think you kind
Right.
of brought that a little bit. And that's
But
important too.
here's the thing too. That's the other part of it is this. It's human beings are perpetrating these acts against other human beings. So from that standpoint, you have the trauma, right, that we're all feeling. And yeah, you're right. People do come together during things like this. Human nature, people come together, they help each other. And we saw a lot of that after 9/11. But the part that is difficult that all people also have to deal with, and I don't know how they deal with this on a spiritual level, is again, there's human beings committing these acts against other human beings. And in many cases, there's a cover up. There's something that happens that is not that it's almost an insidious type of event. So what winds up happening is if you're a rational thinking person, that's where we're going to get into the second part of this, in this cognitive dissonance. Okay, so you're watching all this unfold in front of you, whether it was JFK assassination, whether it was 9/11, whether it's other events. It could be government sanctioned, whatever you want, whatever. That could be false flag events, whatever that might be. So everything you thought you knew was right and was real is not. It all of a sudden it's a lie, and you are forced to deal with the fact that there might be people behind this who you thought were supposed to protect you, and now they're not protecting you anymore, and you almost become like this orphan. Like I remember this one woman, she was talking about 9/11, the psychology of 9/11, and she said that at a certain point a lot of people realize when you do the research, same with JFK assassination, same with Watergate, when you do the research, you realize that the institutions that were these patriarchal institutions that are supposed to be there for you as you're a U.S. citizen, so the U.S. government and the U.S. military is supposed to be there to protect you. These very institutions are not there to protect you. You realize that it's all a lie, and you realize that they could really care less about you. They don't care about collateral damage. They don't care about the damage that was done with something as insidious as the JFK assassination, right? Nixon and his cohorts didn't care about what the damage done as a result of Watergate, the lack of trust that resumed, that I would say that grew, right, from the Vietnam War. And then you had Watergate, and it was like, well, no one knew how to trust anymore. Trust is something that we all need, and we all need to have. All of a sudden we don't have it anymore. And 9/11, it's just like, wait a minute, how did those buildings fall down? We're not going to get into all the details of 9/11. I don't know what happened. I have no clue. I haven't done enough research. I don't know. But there are some things that are very fishy when associated with the actual event itself. So how do people, now we're not only traumatized, but we're having this cognitive dissonance where we're like, we can't come to terms with the fact. We have to almost block it out and deny that there would be something very strange going on in front of our eyes. So that I want to throw back to you guys too, from a spiritual standpoint. Yeah, we tend to come together in times like this, but we still have to deal with the damage that's done by human beings to other human beings.
What therapists are doing is, at least one who helped Vietnam War veterans, was teach meditation. And this is where spirituality becomes science, because we're taught to believe, we've seen the world full of fundamentalist religions that should have the solutions, right, to these sorts of things. That's why we have a spirituality, or a religion. It used to be called a religion, the age of Pisces belief of 2,000 years, which is now ended. And now we're in a world, according to many people, we're in a time of truth now. But the religion is these are supposed to be holy people, holy men who think about things all day and they solve issues with the state, and the state has been separated from the religion. Now we find corruption in both of them, especially military industrial complex upholding through weapons, illegal weapons sales to uphold the banking systems and ultimately the secret society. So a very small handful of people running old, outdated draconian systems and operating machinery that's not even being operated supposedly by evil extraterrestrials. And so how do you get to that meditative space? They found in a group of 2,000 monks, not that becoming a monk is the answer either, because the tantric feminine is also reemerging. So, but in a study of 2,000 monks, an entire river was cleared of some sort of parasitic life form due to meditation. There are videos coming out on tumors becoming a lot smaller. So it's becoming scientifically tested, the effects of a mass spiritual event, like the mentioned Cryon channeling, where he does channel at the United Nations. So when we talk about British mediumship and theosophy, which is based on a Hinduist Indian tradition, these sorts of facilities are being held in meetings at the United Nations. I'm not saying the United Nations is perfect, but it's certainly, we're not being shown this on television.
Right. Well, the media plays a part in this as well, which I don't think is not a good part. Vivian, please. I mean, and look, I'm looking for answers from you guys today. That's why I was looking forward to the show. I don't have any. I just go. To me, it's very depressing, and to me, it's like, what hope do we have? And this is good. I know you're like, oh, come on, Jack, that's so negative, and it's like, it is, because, but here's the thing: there's a yin yang to everything, right? Yes. So, I'm thinking to myself, wait a minute, but these are actual human beings. And I get that, like that collective consciousness of the monks being able to heal a body of water, right? And those things can happen. But it seems like human beings are doing more bad things than good things when it comes to that. I think there's go ahead.
Yeah, it's an impression. This is what we call the great fever on the planet. And one of the things is that, when you talk about earlier, Jack, in terms of the violation of trust in those who are in authority, government, or like you mentioned, Krista, religion faction, right? Where people, a really large part of the population turns to for answers, for solutions, for guidance, trusting, investing body, mind, and spirit in it. And so these events, of course, has to be acknowledged, that we all agreed upon this. Acknowledged to be able to really heal body, mind, healing body, mind, spirit, and allowing people to finally free themselves from the confinement of what those traumatic imprint can cause to them, in terms of even believing what they can or cannot achieve in life, or even from fulfilling destiny. That when a soul incarnate in a body, the soul has what's called a destiny, which has nothing to do with fate. Fate is more like, a feeling or something that you feel it as an invisible force, and you let yourself navigate through like a leaf in the wind. But when you think about retrieving your destiny at the soul level, it can be also a destiny at the planetary level. And so what happened is that with those traumatic events, World War I, World War II, 9/11, JFK assassination in spade, such an icon of trust, hope, faith, a beacon of light where an entire nation says, finally, we're going to be entering a new era, and that is taking out. At the same time, we have to remind ourselves, we're coming to an age of truth, deeper answers, and also we are also entering an era where we are identifying ourselves with other form of masters, and that master is right here within you. So allowing yourself to redefine what is fate is to you, what is trust means, and what source or what level of trust of source are you investing your trust? Are you investing your energy? Are you investing yourself, including your personal power as co-creator? And so it's a return to more profound source. So you think about the profoundness of in human history, okay? In human history, of all these events, and we just just mention a handful of them that are significantly impactful at the same time as we're healing the trauma. Like you said, whether it's meditation, whether it's going into soul retrieval, being able to heal, those soul fragments and feel also that people feel in oneness and they can be at peace. Finally, being able to detach from the stigma of these events. So one thing that higher form of group consciousness uh, have observed about human beings is that overall human beings have a tendency to self-punish themselves, in a sense that if you've gone through traumatic events in your life, which everyone on the planet have in different different sources, different ways, or collectively, is that we have a tendency to replay them over and over and over again and stay stick within that paradigm of what happened. Oh, look at World War II. All the movies have been out, all those books. We have to talk about yes, but talking about it and creating movie and documentary and all of it, it comes to the point where are you going to come to full circle with that? And that's where we're transitioning from which master are you listening, and what part of you are you allowing yourself to invest to, and what source. And so it's a huge golden opportunity for another level of healing to take place on the planet for everyone, for families, for generations, for those who have been there and physically to live such events, and those who have been passed on certain gene that has been from, like if you look at the World War II, I too in my blood lineage on my human side has, war veterans in my lineage. And I can tell you that I realized that I had to heal an aspect of those genes and help them, those members of my family on the human side, to heal themselves. So when they transform, that they don't bring that baggage, we can be free from this. And so there's a lot of salted teas in terms of layers you can work that. But 2020 moving up, 2020 is just the launching platform. We are called to see, wait a second, if I look at the history in terms of structures, in terms of religion faction, in terms of event that took place on the planet. Now, what is my role? Your role is to heal yourself, to discover who you are. One of the things is that people have no idea who they are. They think that embodying, like, well, I come from Kansas. I grew up in such place, and my family has such a lineage of bankers or veterans or political, all of it. But in reality, this is just the storyline you were born into on the human level. Who are you? What are you really capable of? So I like the fact that we are bringing multiple layers to it. We're bringing more and multidimensional aspect to it, because the real question is that who are we returning to? What source are we moving back to? And that's what we call the great fever on the planet for a great return. And we're using this time of wording so they can feel that we have a platform, so to speak, to walk on. So it ties up, it bridges up with hope that you mentioned, Jack. What hope do we have is the fact that, people overall are awakening, gathering, whether it's, monk meditation, where we can heal the structure of water, we can heal the stigma of the earth, we can heal the animal kingdom and all of it, and we can heal ourselves to reinforce a luminous energy field, and in terms realign ourselves to who we are. But ultimately is that, who are you turning to now? And that's where the bridge of hope comes, in our humble opinion, of course, is that get to know who you are. So those history, what you've gone through on the planet, to live portions of history, and the fact that you exist, that we're here, well, we're all within a synergy. We all, in terms of everyone on the planet, we are in the same symbiotic bond, if you want. And so, of course, the stigma of past situation, past event, traumatic events, whether it's, the fall of great dynasty from the Roman Empire to China, they have gone through so much downfall on that level. And yet what we do is that we're returning now. It's look of it as the great fever, pushing all of it to be recognized, to be acknowledged, to be healed, to say, okay, from now on, moving forward, where do we turn to? And now finally we go, yes, human beings, you finally get it. You are returning to you here. You're returning to learn who you are.
But I feel like, and I want to ask the both of you this question, because I feel like there are human beings who are on that path, but there are a lot of human beings who are not on that path. They do not wish to save the planet. Not only are they there's one thing as far as apathy and not being awake, right? And not waking up and being like, hey, I got to do more. I gotta get with the program here. I'm part of this. I'm part of this incredible story, this human story that we talk about, right? But I'll go all the way on the other end and say there are human beings out there who wish to harm the planet, who wish to harm people, who wish to harm the collective, who wish to cause chaos, who wish to rule and control and be greedy and control everything they can. So yes, from that standpoint, I get that, but and I want to get your feel. A lot of these people are our leaders. They are the people that rule the world. They're the people that are making the laws. I haven't seen any laws made lately that are protecting the environment. I haven't, not since Trump's been elected. So how do we deal with this? And who are these people? Are these people not human, really? I mean, when I say that, I mean we're human with spirit. We're human beings, and we have spirit, right? We're spirit. That's our essence.
Mm-hmm.
Who are these people who would do such insidious things, not care, and only care about greed and power? Are they that asleep? Are they that? I mean, what is it? Is it a pathology? Is it some kind of a mental illness?
Yes. The trippiest. I told you guys the whip would come out. Okay. The trippiest explanation from the spiritual community has been that we exist in a 12-dimensional matrix where these evil, horrible beings have created a phantom zone accessing up to 11.5. I do not have proof of this. However, the theory goes that they cannot access 12 dimensionality. I've heard of 10-dimensional theories of God. And so it's like a whole spirit world conflict. I'm not saying that's correct. I'm not saying it's not correct. I don't know. However, when you want to know is the common symptom, all the teachings point to this thing called the law of one. And ever since Atlantis, you come across this reality. Ever since shamanism happened, you come across this reality is that we're actually all connected. And the individuals doing these heinous activities and crimes against this planet, and not to mention possibly extraterrestrial visitors, have been the disconnects from the oneness consciousness. And so it's really a matter of a soul fragment reincarnating, looping in the astral plane, coming back, looping, coming back, falling spiritually lower and lower and lower in the spirit world, and until they disintegrate into basically space dust or quanta and go back to God's light. This is like the most out there theory I have for this. And basically you get obliterated and self-annihilated or whatever, implosion. And the issue with the psychopaths here is they want to be freaking immortals. They have no appreciation for reincarnational process, for the biology. In all of this fairy tale, there are these crusted old geezers with oozing faces that keep patching up themselves and will at any cost live. So they're actually in total fear. And I've heard that these humans are obsessed with coming back to the earth plane. They have to get back here. It's like crack for them. They don't explore the galaxy. They're stuck here. And so on some sort of God-given level of creation, there must be some sort of universal compassion for these beings, because we all know that this destructive behavior ends really badly. However, if you're like a young soul from God, I'm thinking you don't have experience. This is what some of the Michael channelings have said. And so you don't know. It's like, how does a college student help a freshman in high school to get through the process? A lot of people don't make it past high school. And so anyway, I'm going a little bit further.
No, that makes a lot of sense from a soul level. I just read a book, Journey of Souls, and it talked about that. A little bit. Yeah. Hey, there you go. Yeah, right there. I just finished that book. But he made a great point that stuck with me. He said that the way you get Adolf Hitler's, Richard Nixon's, I don't know if you put him in the same category, but I do. But I'm that guy. I'm the guy who gets in trouble. But there are a lot of people I feel like are just nasty. They just did no good being on this planet at all. Hitler is the obvious one. But I said what happens is it's a young soul incorporated into a mind that had an issue. And what I mean by that is, and what he talked about in the book, is that we as souls come into before we're actually born into the fetus, and we kind of integrate with the mind of that body. Now, the mind is a tangible thing, right? So the spirit has to incorporate into that mind, but sometimes that mind might be a little off, and that's part of the challenge. He says it's part of the challenge of coming back in spirit form and living these lifetimes. So let's say you have a young soul. Say young Adolf was a young soul, and he comes back and he comes into this body where the brain is wired to be narcissistic, sociopathic, and psychopathic. That spirit, being such a young spirit, is not going to be able to navigate that very well. And hence you end up with the Holocaust. Is that fair to say?
It would be, because if we look at a young, inexperienced from a point of incarnation point of view, have no experience, so there's a certain purity and spark that soul will bring if it comes directly from source, and integrate an energy field that has a certain predisposition. Let's say that form of that person that will incarnate is here to possibly, and I should put it out there, to heal and learn from being a psychopath and all of it. And the soul says, okay, you know what, as one of my first assignments, I'm just coming from creation itself, by my purity, and since I'm emerging without having all those filters that gather from timeline after timelines, I'm going to incorporate what you call the mind or the luminous energy field with those predisposition, and I'm going to be able to take on that challenge. Then it can be too much for that soul and going, what did I sign up for? Was I on crack? Was I crazy? You know, many of us, I talk about, oh, it looks so good. I volunteer. I'm coming. And when you come here, you go like, oh my God, what did I do?
Yeah, I could definitely. That makes a lot of sense. Yeah, and then all of a sudden you're overwhelmed with this.
Exactly.
You're just not ready for that kind of. But here's my question to you guys. So from a spiritual perspective, we can make sense of this from the standpoint of it's all about soul growth. It's all about this coming to an understanding as we grow to what our purpose really is, who we really are, all of that stuff. And older souls, obviously, when they come and they incarnate down here on this planet, they have a better understanding of that from the get-go than younger souls do in these bodies. Okay. But what my question is, as human beings who have to deal with this, and I guess my question would be, first of all, why are all of these people our leaders? Why is it that the biggest narcissists and the biggest sociopaths, there was a book written by this guy who said, and I can't remember the name of the book, and I'll have to look that up, but he said that there's a decent percentage of all of our presidents of the United States were narcissists.
Mm.
So there's like, apparently there's leadership qualities. I wrote an article once about CEOs and the number of CEOs who were literally bipolar. And there's a reason why they gain so much power and they get so much done and they accomplish so much because of the narcissistic sociopathic personality. So I guess my question is, our leaders and the people who are shaping the future of planet Earth, and I bring up global warming and climate change is a huge example of this. They are not the leaders we need, but it's like the lunatics are running the asylum. Is there any truth in that?
For sure. Because these, it's funny, I had a whole list here of all this rational, logical stuff I want to share with you guys, and I can't help but go to my spiritual teachings. Go for it, man. Go for it. It's just so good. This goddess, talk of the goddess. It's a great story from Hinduism that explains the goddess Sita, who was the divine other half of Shiva, who was to usher in the cosmic energy, withdrew her essence because she was dishonored by the father. He promised when they reincarnate to physicality that he would, things created in the honor of these great deities, temples, whatever they used to build for them, and that stopped. And it was because of this narcissism or whatever. And so she withdrew her energy, and for a very long time, that cosmic energy was not able to move. So this is why Shiva is seen meditating, and Sati is supposed to bring Shiva into the world to be able to do the act. So if you think about a spoiled brat kid from your childhood, I think too, don't narcissists usually have a horrible story, but then you hear how they were some of them were so privileged and so lucky, and things were handed to them. And these like angry brat kids, how do they become psychopaths? At what point is the damage already done? And so certain teachings offer the suggestion that they were already corrupt soul in a past life, so they're still learning, still keep coming back. And so there's a tendency, so it's not just someone's mom's fault or dad's fault. It's parental, and this is why the regression therapists are going into past lives. It's not just childhood trauma healing. They're doing quantum healing, beyond emotional auric layer. So a lot of people get regressed. They start crying. They flip out. They relive the memory, the trigger. It gets triggered. But below that somnambulistic state is they're talking about other planets and trippy stuff, and they're disclosing political storylines. So the human mind is very fragile. Life is so very fragile. And if we could see from a perspective of ETs, for instance, they can look into us on quantum levels and genetically look at our astrological charts, supposedly from a drop of blood some zetas can, maybe. And they can see the problem. They're like these people who see mantid extraterrestrials. They say those are usually the doctors on the spacecraft and Zoro's Cannon custodians. Why? Why should we have people reporting motherships that are cloaked and hidden from plain view, where people are getting fixed and people are getting helped? And why do Native American people say, look at the bird's eye perspective, the hawk-eye view? I'm an air sign. You're an air sign. Where's the solution, folks? It's on an individual basis. It's the individual decision to not think a better thought that takes supposedly Esther Hicks 17 seconds to attract a similar frequency. So we're sucked in. There's a pull to this earth to come here. And I think a really great question to ask you guys and our viewers is, why don't people get up? Why do people remain asleep? Is it the food? Yeah. Is it the toxins? It's multidimensional. I agree. It's multidimensional. But what's our job as woke people to do? How do we get them? Are we responsible for their waking?
Well, that's a great question, Vivian. Okay, here you go. Why? That's exactly right. So you have, some of us are awake, some of us are whatever you want to call them. Why? But what I would say is, how do we deal with this? How do we deal with the fact that a lot of these individuals, whether they're narcissists, sociopaths, psychopaths, all of the above, are making all the rules and controlling everything? How do we address this? How do we address this collectively? And how do we get through it?
Well, it's very complex in terms of what you're describing, narcissistic or psychopath. All these are labels, trait that a soul take on and then the person embody. When you look at the concept, and everybody agrees to at least a minimum concept that you lived before and that your soul, has gone through different cycle of incarnations, then you can also stretch it to the point that your soul or many souls on the planet are not earthbound, and they're not originally from this earth plane, or even not originally from this solar system. They will be coming from other planetary system, other galaxies, multiverse, and all of it. So taking the principle that we come already when we incarnate with a certain level of consciousness, and that consciousness evolve as you make conscious choice to follow this path. There are many great level of distraction on the planet that have been put in place to, like the shiny, satisfaction to shopping, satisfaction to temporary fix. And when we start to dig deeper to address the bigger core of everything, this is where people going, oh, that's a lot of work. In reality, it's not. It's just really a conscious choice. Choose differently. I don't know if you heard, guys, about a book called A Course in Miracles. Mm-hmm. It is believed to be channeled directly from Sananda, also known as Jesus. And if you look at the Course of Miracles, the foundation, and I'm no expert, but I've been involved with it in the past. One of the things they said, this book, channeled, was designed to be serving as a reversal of thought system. So we can wake up from insanity of identifying from the lower mind and to being able to return. And again, that look back to what we were saying earlier, to look back to where we come from and who we are, to snap out of this. Like we talk about dream state, or what is the dream and what is reality. One of the things, and I do say one of the many things I like about A Course in Miracles, is at any given time when you feel start to be involved emotionally, mentally, you start to be sucked in terms of the drama of politics and religion and all of these issues that we're talking today, is stop yourself there, ground yourself, and to say, I like where this is coming from? Does it really serve to uplift myself, to help me grow, to help me learn, to help me heal? Then I choose differently. And it says in the Course, choose differently. And that really is. So think of it as a map, or, like 180 degrees reversal of thought system. The thing is, not everything is black and white, and we all agree on this. There's so many shades of gray. What are you responsible for? What you're responsible for is the time that is given to you in this lifetime. You're responsible to where do you invest? Where are your investments? You can be invested into investigating crime against humanity in the past, but what is your intentions? And what's your energy? Are you fueling it more to kind of get it going without even being conscious of it? Or are you bringing opportunities to liberate the soul and the energy and the stigma and the trauma for everyone involved in this, and therefore creating a spark of light on the planet, which in turns illuminates like a network, it illuminates the mass consciousness for everyone on the planet. And we call about all sentient life. It's not just human being, because all life are attached here. So, that's another thing to see. I know I'm passionate about this, but at the same time, it's an invitation to revise. What is it you're creating by doing this and your intentions? So that's one thing that we want to bring out. So you are truly responsible for your thoughts, feelings, actions, your level of consciousness to monitor where your investment are. Are you participating to some degree into creating more density, or are you participating to consciously create that uplift on the planet? And this is what we're here for. Very much so. We're here to regain, to return to a sense of, who we are, and also the planet, what the planet was designed for in the first place. Those who choose to continue to hold on to, I like to be a psychopath. I don't understand anything else but being a psychopath. And I will, at a soul level, choose to continue to evolve to that density and create havoc and chaos and all of it. Guarantee you that where we're moving into collectively, and this conversation is proof of this, is that these souls at some point will be redirected to other places that recreate a similar time construct of density, of chaos, of perpetuating this kind of things, so to speak, so they can continue to evolve in that sense. The great invitation that I can feel I receive on a daily basis from multiple different group of consciousness is focus on your evolution, focus on helping others. And it's not to convince anyone, and we know that. And it's by allowing yourself to be a beacon of light, to understand your role, to maximize the time that is given to you. You have a very short time on the planet. How are you utilizing it? And also being conscious of where you're distributing, where are you giving out seed, a spark of your power all over, and to recognize, and we have talked about this before and we will say it again, it's that it's just not just human being against human being. We all need to recognize that there are other forms of being that are also working with human beings to perpetuate a certain paradigm, a paradigm of chaos, a paradigm of control, a paradigm of all those labels, because they have, for them, it serves them very well. And this is why we're here to also liberate ourselves, heal, and whatever words you want to bring into it. But we have to also bring the fact that this much more just human beings. Where are those thoughts coming from? Where those behavior are nurtured and nourished to be in a certain way, whether it's destructive, whether it's, healing, whether it's, where is it coming from? It's not just from the mental or the brain or the program. Where does the program come from? So you have to start to dig deeper, to start to pull real roots behind the scenes, so to speak, because there's much more to it. If you look at the genuine history of the earth and how human beings start to evolve, well, it's not just human being to human being, right? There are others if you look at the DNA structure, for example, that's a good example, how the human race have evolved in such very short period of time. If you look at natural evolution, it would have taken millions of years, and it was very, very condensed in terms of thousands of years. I'm no expert in history in that sense, but we can tell that human race have made leap of conscious evolution. And so you have to look at, there's been influence, there's been positive influence, there's been all kind of influences, and we have to reconcile the fact that, okay, this earth is as diverse as there are stars in the universe. And I think we can all agree at least on that premise, right?
Yeah. Would I be correct in saying that there's more at stake now, though? Like all the bad behavior for thousands of years and all the things that people have done and the terrible things people have done to each other didn't mean as much as they mean now. And why? Because there are two reasons: technology and climate change, where I feel like we're running out of time. So this shift better occur pretty quickly. Like if I turn on the news tonight, I don't think I'm going to be happy. So I don't watch the news. But if I turn on the news tonight, I think I'm going to walk away pretty angry, frustrated. When does the shift occur? How much time do we have left? Because if we factor, and I'm talking about Mother Earth, I'm talking about Gaia now, I'm talking about global warming, climate change. Okay, I'm talking about nuclear weapons and madmen who have these weapons at their disposal. This wasn't the case during the Roman Empire. They could have been the crappiest people in the world, but they didn't have that much. Whatever they didn't have that much consequence on all of humanity. Where I feel now, how much time do we have left? I mean, there are scientists now that say we're already past the point of no return with climate change. No matter what, I know this is, but there are scientists that we're beyond that point. There's nothing we can do. It sounds awful, but I'm saying I just want to bring this to you guys and say, well, when does it change? How much time do we have left? How at some point we have to cut the nonsense, right? We can't. We're done with. We have no more spiritual mulligans left. We can't just say, oh, well, I'm going to come down and learn and I'll be an asshole this lifetime, but I'll come back again and I'll do some good stuff eventually. Like what I think we're running out of time. Krista, I mean, is that something that I could be way off, but I really feel that way.
Yeah, I have something to add to the climate change discussion. And that is the point about the poles. The poles. So our planet is this shape, and there's an axis to this planet, and this axis rotates like this in this direction. Right. That means this axis moves in a rotation like a how am I doing this correctly? It's like this. So it doesn't tilt upside down. It just rotates like this around a center point. But you will have a natural climate shift regardless of the fossil fuel. You'll have a natural climate change that come and go. And we need to teach this to children. And if a pole is shifting at 35 miles per hour and extraterrestrial are channeling through humans that there's a pole shift happening, you'll have things like flood warnings in Wales saying next 26 years the water levels are going to go up. People are mostly freaking out because they're concerned that the temperature is going up. And this is where they have had panels of scientists at the United Nations talking about this. I mean, you've seen some crises. For instance, in India, they started squirting water into the air to cool it off. Mm-hmm. And so with that, you're saying you might see droughts in other places. So technologies are shifting. They're able to clean ocean water. They're able to filter it. They're able to bring water out of thin air with certain devices. So the advanced technology exists. And my question is, why are we sending rocket ships and Mars rovers that cost trillions of dollars when we could be installing things like air purifiers, pyramid technology, crystalline towers, rather than towers that are killing birds? And so in order to know what is happening with the planet, we have to study the migration of animals because they are connected to the magnetic grid. So when Lee Carroll is channeling Cryon says Cryon is of magnetic service, and he channels science in his stuff. And so when you are repressing science, you're also you're destroying your own planet. And so when if it is true that this is a free will planet, I think you're asking us, how much freedom do we really have? How much effect do I have as a visual sitting here getting this horrible news?
That's right.
I can't just blow into I can't just blow into the air. So what does an average person do? An average person communicates. They use their voice. They speak up. They make artwork. They sign petitions. Some people march out in the street with signs. They have demonstrations. They create articles. They journal. They inform newspapers. They take photographs of evidence. They share it on their social media. They tell everybody. They ask questions. And this is one reason I really wanted Miguel to come on the show, because he knows about permaculture and fossil fuels. And I have looked into, are people still using coal? They're still using coal. But Germany has now the fastest electric train, and Finland already has these silver bullet speed trains. And so there's just no excuse for the misuse of things like Federal Reserve missing trillions. What are you spending on? And the youth is looking at Elon Musk obsessions with Mars. I don't know who Elon Musk is. I'm not really interested in celebrities, but I'm interested in how are these people with lots of money spending. So the recent whistleblowing has disclosed that after you start making billions of dollars, you start getting approached by secret societies.
Right.
So to the millionaires in the room is, if you're not changing the textbooks to correctly talk about this stuff, people are going to go into chaos. And so we have to be mindful of the news headlines that we believe, because certain news wants us to be in chaos. And that's right. And so, of course, we look into spiritual law, but they found in recent studies of violence that the peaceful protest was actually more effective. So we are more dealing with animalistic people who have not evolved to Homo novus, Homo noeticus. They can't levitate stuff. They have caveman bones sticking out their head. They have more Neanderthal genes. So how do you communicate to a club-bearing Neanderthal some science about how to install a recycling machine in rural India instead of investing in more plastic bottles? Like, very simple things that have to take place in a very organized way across the planet Earth. And if someone like me can figure it out from home, I'm sure that these people in political situations have the time of day to contemplate it and write laws. The Orion Council showed me that there are people in positions of power that have stacks of paper this high, and all they have to do is sign it to pass a law.
Right, but they don't want to. That's my point. That's what I'm concerned with. You're right. Absolutely right. That's exactly what should happen. Exactly what should. And, it's funny, Miguel Mendonça, for those he's been on the show, it's funny. He was in that world for quite a while, but he's one of the first people to tell me, and you can ask him, he's like, it's too late. We're done. And his outlook on the fact, the way he views humanity at this point is not very optimistic. And I don't blame him. It's like, okay, yeah, there are all these things, and there is this technology. Why aren't we using it? Why aren't our leaders spending money on that? Why are they instead still spending money on fossil fuels so people can make money? It's all about greed. It's all about power. And if we're smart enough to understand this, then how could these Princeton, Harvard educated politicians who are our leaders, how could they not get it? Vivian?
Well, we respectfully disagree. We definitely, for what constantly the Octurian shows me, we refuse to partake of what just said, because I can feel in my thymus chakra the energy start to be very, very thick. And then just to be mindful not to sink too much in the paradigm of fear, because I can tell you there's a vibration of it right now. In terms of running out of time, that's exactly what they want you to believe. That's exactly what they want you to invest in, and you're doing it. And that's okay, because it's part of the path for so many on the planet. So ultimately is looking at how we use the resources. Of course, do we need to educate ourselves? Naturally. Do we need to communicate and bring the network creating a much larger network, yes, on the planet, to build a community of more conscious people? Absolutely. That's an aspect of what we can do through a three-dimensional approach. But again, understanding that who's behind the scene imposing that we're not going to go into free electricity, free way of resources, while using fuel, compass, and digging still all in the earth, and then transporting and outdating both those kind of substance that can pollute the ocean with the substance of life. We absolutely agree upon those things. However, without being said, and keeping that in mind in terms of consciousness, go back again, what can you do on a daily basis is your thought forms emit a signature energy that creates a lot more changes on the planet, including on the climate, than any other fuel that we can use. Just monitoring. Nobody talks about, let's monitor our thought forms today collectively, just for one day. Like let's utilizing a Reiki principle just for today. I will not use anger, but just for today, I will monitor the quality of my thought forms, because consciously I understand that my thoughts have the power to shift the climate, to shift how the planet can feel, and I can also affect life form on this planet. And even through our star brothers and sisters, they constantly monitoring, so to speak, the fuel of our thought form that comes from the planet right in space, so to speak. And they have to clear that, because our thought forms, and there's billions of them coming on the earth every single day, affect other star system, affect other planet, can travel as far to affect, has a ripple effect, other life forms. But we don't talk about that. We have to talk about what's on the news today. So allowing us to bring, now we're whipping you right now spiritually, allowing you to bring.
I know, that's okay. That's good. I love it. I love you. I love the Arcturians.
I know, and we love
they've already given me a lot of great advice. No, and no, but here's the thing. No, Vivian, it's all good, and I don't want to think the way I think. I don't, well, and I don't think. I always have hope. I'm writing books. I'm doing documentaries to try to change things. I'll never give up. I'll never ever.
Do you know how the when Hopi do rain dance, what they say they do before it rains, because it works for them. If you ever remember as a kid, you wish something so hard and it happened. Mm-hmm. The guy said he imagines the droplets of water on his face. He feels the cool of the air. He is breathing in this oxygen-rich soil, and he hears the sound of the rain falling in this dry place. That is what is required. And so this is truly the answer. I have more technical answers, but they're just very obvious. But the reason to share these sort of techie obvious responses, because for that very reason, that people spend most of their days consumed by reflecting, and it's like a they call it a witch's circle in Finnish, noidankehä, and that is the part of the psychological trauma. Is you go to the therapy 8 times with the same issue, and the nice therapist whips you and says, well, what did you change? And then you go to the other therapist, you say, that guy's crap, right? So in a larger sense, in people who've taken psychedelic, shame on you for not bringing that dimension here, because that's the job. And I ask people about this nicely, and then they ghost me. They have an emotional meltdown. They don't want to hear that reflected. They don't want to hear that the bank account is empty. They don't want to hear that their leg is hurting. They pretend that things are not upsetting for them. And we have done so much already that we cannot discount ourselves when it comes to international fair trade policies, stem cell grown meats, access to plant medicines, and ongoing Colorado's just legalized mushroom machinery. I talked about water, access to spacecraft. Anti-gravity is already shown in Paris in the streets. They have like a surfboard looking thing. They did it in front of everyone. EMF protected cars. When you start hearing this pew sound in your community, that's not an oil car, that's electric or a hybrid car. The millionaires they can just get that overnight. The spiritual news channels, alternative, 8 out of 10 Americans watch YouTube now. So people are watching your YouTube channel and care what you have to say. More libraries, recreational sports centers. I met a guy, he was hooking up internet in West African countries. Cuba just got on the internet. Also, this new golden energy that is showing up in the genetics, so let alone people having a halo effect and becoming immune to things like pathogen, which have already been proved to be completely disappeared in places like King's Chamber and Giza pyramid. So the correct mathematical sacred geometry is unattractive to parasitic thought forms. They have this in Russia. Why not in America? And so things like hemp products, things like psychology. And finally, just to wrap up my side of things, is access to the fifth dimension. And so, if worse comes to worse on this planet, it sounds so dark, but there's always the fifth dimension, guys. And we are eternal beings. And so they can keep trying, but we won't die.
Well, yeah, there you go. No, and I think from a spiritual perspective, there's a lot of positivity here. There's a lot of hope. There's always, because when you think about it from a spiritual perspective, I guess none of this here really matters in the end. We're all on a journey of growth, and we'll come back and we'll go to other planets, and we're never, in essence, going to quote unquote die. At least our essence won't. But and you guys are so positive, and that's why I thought I was going to play devil's advocate today, and I knew I was going to, because I've been reading so many books lately that are just so dark, but on purpose for research, because I think you have to go through that to get out the other side and say, okay, well, how do we change this? If all this did happen and all this is happening, well, then you look to the whistleblowers, you look to the people who do care very much about the planet and other people. And most human beings are really good. Let's all agree on that. Most human beings are pretty awesome. They love their families. They love their pets. They're loving creatures. We have an enormous capacity for that. But then, we're dealing with, like you guys said, there's a certain energy that we have to deal with as well that isn't as great as that. Vivian, final thoughts on this? We talked about a lot today. There's so much to this, but any kind of final thoughts on everything we've been talking about?
Indeed. Thank you so much, Jack. And I know that you are a very powerful light worker. One of the things that the team said to me as you were speaking is that the good news is that there's no longer need to linger in the dark or to understand the dark. We've already done it. Now it's very much we're in a state of re-emergence. And trust the earth. The earth is a lot older than all of us. She has gone through many cycles of regenerations, whether it's mini ice age, which is more the case than heating the planet. There's definitely a regeneration cycle that is also occurring naturally. And I like the polarity that you explained earlier, Krista. That was a really good illustration. And really is that we have entered all collectively and agreed upon, whether we're conscious of it or not, that we're returning now, we're creating a more faithfully, so to speak, to what our divine cosmic blueprint is about. And just start to understand, what you can do and all the possibility that are at your fingertip. We need to return to activating ourselves, detoxifying the body. When you detoxify your body, you detoxify also your mind. And again, just pay attention. Why do I put my intention? Why do I invest the most? And also, what part do I play here? And then I can tell you, yes, the team agreed, is that there's so much more coming on the planet, plus the assistance we're getting from the higher realm, whether it's the Ascended Masters, the spiritual hierarchy of this planet. We have assistance also from many enlightened star civilizations that are working side by side with human beings, because they already understand and they can see us in our true nature. They says, hey, we know who you are, guys, and we're here to assist you to wake up from this dream, to wake up from this journey that you say, okay, I have gone very deep into it. You play your role. You understand what both sides are. You understand you're going beyond labels. You're recognizing more and more, where you are at the state of level that you are even on the planet. So we're returning to be more in sync with the natural rhythm of the planet. And so we're going to redefine our calendars. We're redefining time. We're redefining how we live, how we breathe, how we think, how we relate to one another. And all this crap, so to speak, behind the scene with shadow government and space, Air Force, and all of this, this is what we call the great fever that we mentioned earlier. It's all coming to the surface for this deep, deep purging on the planet And why? Because it can no longer be supported. It can no longer be sustained. We have gone way further in our light than we have gone in the dark. And this is why it feels so thick. This is why it feels so important for, investigator journalists like yourself, like both of you, to be able to bring more dialogue, investigation, documentary, podcast, because it shows that we're bringing everything to the surface for transformation. And we're past, that point even in history. The planet won't be destroyed, I can tell you that. We passed that point. It won't be allowed. It cannot be. And the Earth is very clever. She knows what she's doing. I can tell you that. And so follow her lead. Follow her lead.
That's awesome. Wow, you actually made me feel better. I feel better now.
Yeah.
Thanks, guys.
Yay. It worked.
Together.
Now I'll go talk to Miguel and cheer him up. That's good stuff. Yeah, I love it.
Well, guys, this is the Aquarius season's beginning. And of course, thanks to all our lovely viewers who are with us this whole hour. Again, you guys check out J3 Films, Extraordinary, and The Seeding, and also Vivienne Chauvet's incredible work and different sessions on infinite healing from the stars. There was so much we left out, but we will tackle this hopefully in the next episode. On Monday, we have our special guest, talking about star seeds and what the youth have to say. So thanks so much, Vivienne. Thanks, Jack. We'll see you guys next time.
Thank you.